Thank you so much for joining in. How's everybody doing? I'm Oscar Blue for Border Network News correspondent for Real America's Voice News and the Wendy Bell Radio Network. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure for me to say hello to you guys this morning. Share the video, like the video, share the video, like the video. Censorship, it's happening to all. So if you guys will hit that like button on Facebook, hit that bell button on YouTube, and also we're live at Getter and we're live at Twitter for every single one of you. Today, it is an honor for me to have this man that I will put his description right now on the screen right now for everybody to understand who am I having the honor to be interviewing today. This is Mr. Michael Yon. I will read a little bit about him. At the age of 19, he has become the youngest people ever to successfully complete the Green Beret training. Over the next 6 years, he learned what it takes to be accepted into the United States elite and unconventional warfare units. His Green Beret experience taught him the art of serving and surviving the most dangerous environments on Earth. Combining his skills as a writer and photographer and with encouragement of fellow veterans, Michael began his correspondent career by traveling in Iraq in December 2004. That was the first step in his nearly 20-year journey, traveling the globe to report on world events firsthand. He has traveled more than 80 countries, including China, India, Bhutan, and Vietnam. And also, not only that, Mr. Michael Yon has been embedded on numerous occasions with American and British troops in Iraq, most prominently in deployment with the 1st Battalion, 24th Infantry Regiment, Deuce 4, and also the 25th Infantry Division in Mosul, Iraq, that embedded in 2005. He has received multiple interviews by mainstream media and also social media, and also different awards in 2005, 2007, 2008, the Weblog Awards. He has been considered in 2008 by the New York Times that he has spent more time embedded with combat units in Iraq with you. And it is an honor for me to present to you one of my current role models in journalism. I will say that in a bold way. I admire this man so much. And these are the kind of journalists that we need today. We need men, journalists, that they do this kind of boots on the ground, and they present to us a great example of how to do things, real, uncut, raw footage. This is Mr. Michael Yon. Michael, thank you so much for joining me this morning from Ireland. He is from Ireland right now. He's currently in Ireland right now. Thank you so much, Michael.
Thanks, Oscar, and I really appreciate that incredible introduction. I'm not from Ireland. I'm from Florida, but I'm in Ireland.
No, so you're in Ireland, yes.
Actually talking to you from Ireland. And I wasn't the youngest Green Beret, by the way. I was one of the youngest, but at 19. But here in Ireland, actually, there's two Irelands. Actually, I'm in the Republic of Ireland. I'm in the in the capital, which is called Dublin. And so I'm in downtown Dublin right now. And then there's the other Ireland, the Northern Ireland. So they're both on the same island. And so they're split. Right now, they're working to reunify or unify, that sort of thing. And actually, I'm very close to a boat. I'm like 400 meters away, maybe, from a small ship that used to carry new Americans from Ireland over to United States. And the reason so many of them were immigrating with an E, not immigrating with an I, immigrating out, was because of the huge famines. There was a huge famine here. Especially 1848, it reached peak, but that wasn't the only year. And so maybe 1 million Irish died from it. And then another million or so spread to the 7 seas, especially over to Australia and over to the United States. Some went to places like Mexico. A lot went to Texas. And so a lot of them went up to New York, Boston area, that sort of thing. But it was famine. And that's what we want to talk about today, right? Pandemic, famine, war. It's those three. It's the triangle of death. If you get a big pandemic or a big famine or a big war, you always get the other two, right? That leg of the triangle, pandemic, that one famine, and this one war. You'll always get the triangle of death. And then turn that on its side, you got the tent peg there that makes the pyramid. That's HOP, human osmotic pressure, the push and the pull of migration. So when you get a big famine or a big pandemic or a big war, you'll get a lot of HOP, human osmotic pressure, that pushes people over borders and pulls people over borders, or not necessarily borders, but jump on a boat and sail like they did here. I mean, that old ship was like 400 yards from me, if that. It's right out my window. And so, and it carried huge numbers of Irish over to the United States. And so these things create demographic changes that are permanent, right? And so what we've got going on now, we're clearly going into famine. A lot of Americans think, oh, that'll never happen here. And I would submit to them humbly that you're simply wrong. And this is just based on me who studies war and famine and pandemic around the world for many years. And it's clear that we are actually in great danger. But more immediate danger, obviously, is Africa. They're in famines right now. And they're always in small famines, but right now it's going into something biblical in size. We've already seen what happened to Sri Lanka just months ago. People breaking into the presidential palace and swimming in the president's swimming pool, sleeping in his bed. Literally, you can see the videos on YouTube because they went. The government of Sri Lanka went organic, and it didn't work. Not using the chemicals and the fertilizers, and we'll talk about that, the Haber-Bosch process. And last time I was in Sri Lanka was maybe, 5 years ago, and it was really nice, a lot of food, not expensive. I went down there. One of the things I was checking out was food, actually, because again, as a war correspondent, I know the triangle of death: pandemic, famine, war, pan for war. I was saying it on an interview one time about maybe a year and a half ago. Maybe something like it doesn't matter. But one of my readers, a lady was listening, kind lady, and she says, "You talk about pan for war, pandemic, famine, war, as if you made that term up." And I said, "I did." And she goes, "No. It's in the Bible. The 4 horsemen." I was like, "Wait a minute. You're right. It is in the Bible." That's probably where I got it from when I was a kid, and it's been in the back of my mind ever since, because it is straight in the Bible: pandemic, famine, and war, right? And then Exodus, going, long story short, it's a story as old as time. It's nothing new. Everybody's been through it. All of our families have been through famines. Every one of us has family trees that's been through wars and pandemics. We're all part of that. We're all descendants of it. And so let's get to why we're in so much danger right now. And let's go specifically to natural gas. A lot of people.
I wanted to ask you about that. And I wanted to ask you about that. You have been doing a study, and we talked about this when I believe that you were traveling from, I think that you were in Prague, I believe. So you were traveling from there. And we were talking about the food shortages that is a great problem that is happening in Europe right now, and that is going to hit Europe massively. And it is possibly going to be a trickle and domino effect to the continent of America. Now, I want to ask you this, Michael, and I don't want to be like these radicals, they say, conspiracy theories and creating hysteria and all this kind of stuff. Are they trying to control our food now, and it is actually a thing that is going to happen? Are actually going to control this? Because in Dutchland, as you have investigated, it is happening already. Their farmers are having a huge problem with it. And is it going to grow?
Oh, yeah. I wish you were here with me, Oscar, especially when I just was going through Germany and Czechoslovakia. I lived in Europe for 6 years, by the way, and I speak German. So I'm kind of familiar with the continent, and I've just spent, over 3 months just on this trip, right? And many countries, Austria and Luxembourg and Belgium and Netherlands. Anyway, so I've been taking a good recon this time. And let's go back to the 1800s. In the 1800s, a lot of people were using bird guano for fertilizer, right? And bird guano, there was actually wars for bird guano, like in South America and whatnot. We were, still there was a U.S. government law that, and I think it's still on the books, that if you find an island with bat guano and stake your claim and you're an American, the U.S. military, the full force of the U.S. military would protect that island, right? And I think, what's it called? The Island Guano Treaty or something. I don't remember what it's called. It wasn't a treaty. It was actually law. Anyway, not to go into that, but the bottom line is wars have been fought for fertilizer, right? And now, and actually one of the reasons that this country, Ireland, had a famine in the 1840s was because of actually a fungus that came in with the guano, right? And it led to potatoes being, rotting in the fields, and then the English, caused many, not to go into all the politics of all this, but the bottom line is there was a fungus, and then there was also human elements involved in this country, surrounded by fish. I'm on an island, huge amounts, large seas of protein. They still starve to death, right? And so let's fast forward to 1905. In 1905, there was chemists have been trying to solve this fertilizer problem for years without great success, limited successes. But then one chemist named Fritz Haber, he's a German guy. He wrote a book on thermodynamics, and he described how you could use natural gas, and you could use atmospheric air and take the nitrogen out of the air and strip the hydrogen out of the natural gas and combine it with that nitrogen from the air, and you could make ammonia and urea and ammonium nitrate, right? So that was 1905. I think he first did it in maybe 1908, like physically actually got a drop to come out of the beaker type thing.
Wow.
So it took all kinds of, and so that's Fritz Haber, right? So now we're talking 1908-ish. And then in about 1913, another German chemist named Karl Bosch, he was able to take Fritz Haber's process and make it industrial, right? In other words, you could take, because Fritz Haber, he's like, okay, I can make a drop of ammonia. And then Karl Bosch came along and said, no, I can make it by the trainload, right? And so that's why they call it the Haber-Bosch process. Haber developed it, Bosch developed it on the industrial scale, and they did it at a place called Ludwigshafen, Germany. And I was just over there twice in the last 3 months. Ludwigshafen, Germany is on the Rhine River. That's important. And it's at a plant called the BASF plant, or some people call it BASF. So BASF, that's where they really started doing industrial scale ammonia processes, urea and all that, back in about 1915 is when they really got it cranked up. They started 1913, 14, and really were cranked up in 1915, right? So now all these people, including you and me, we eat we eat food that comes from fertilizer using the Haber-Bosch process every day. I mean, there's like estimated an extra 4 billion people on Earth because of that, which is like more than half the population, right? On Earth are a direct result of the Haber-Bosch process. So you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
We've had tremendous interruptions of natural gas flows for various reasons. Some are the green parties who are destroying this planet. They're saying that we can go into hours on that, but the Green Party and the globalists combined together, they're really not separable. They're like salt water, and they have, through one method after another. For instance, there's plenty of natural gas in Netherlands in a place called Groningen, right? But it's mostly under the ground because they're not pumping it. Now, all the infrastructure's there. They do pump a little bit out, but they could pump enough natural gas out of Groningen to supply all of Netherlands and a huge part of Germany, including BASF. But they don't, because the Greens get together and they do lawfare, and it's like, hey, it's causing earthquakes, and there are small earthquakes when you pump the gas out of the ground, and then the ground depresses. It can cause little cracks in buildings and that sort of thing. But the bottom line is, we're talking about huge numbers of people starving to death. Similar processes on EcoWar they've done over in UK. They've got plenty of natural gas too. There's plenty of other energy sources here in Ireland, such as the peat moss in the ground and and the Greens do everything they can, whether it's Texas or Canada or wherever, to keep us from getting our own energy out and using it. So the bottom line is, now we've just seen Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 blow up. Nord Stream 2 was never actually open, but Nord Stream 1, I've been warning about this for a long time, long before this war ever started. I was saying, watch out for Nord Stream being destroyed or something, cut that thing, cut the cable, basically. It's not a cable, it's pipelines. But so Nord Stream 1 was flowing, and that gas goes to places like BASF and 26 other, well, some of the other plants get their gas from other places. But the natural gas, there's 26 major ammonia producing plants in Europe. Most of those are now shut down completely or will be very soon. So about at least 70% of the capacity is now shut for urea production, for ammonia production in Europe. And a lot of it is shut down in other parts of the world as well. This means there's just not enough fertilizer. I had dinner recently. I spent 2 days with Jordan Peterson. I went on his show a couple months ago, and then he wanted to get with me in Netherlands. So we met in Netherlands. I took him out to see a farmer and meet a CEO of a chemical company and that sort of thing. And the CEO of that chemical company that makes ammonium nitrate, or makes ammonia process and urea, all these nitrogen-based fertilizer, he was very clear. He's like, India, they're just not going to get it because China's not exporting, Russia's not, and India usually gets it from Europe, and they're just not going to get it. Period. So I mean, India is going to face a huge famine because you have to have that fertilizer. Organic, as one farmer told me recently in Netherlands, he said, organic food is for the rich people. I mean, he's like, yeah,
Wow.
you can certainly feed a lot of rich people with organic food, but as a percentage of the normal population, like the rest of us, you just can't produce enough food without using fertilizer, period. And you have to have the insecticides and this sorts of thing. So we're looking at, Oscar, just not enough fertilizer, period, at any price.
What are the possibilities of this fertilizer problem? It's beginning to exacerbate into they're trying to basically control it now. What are the possibilities of this fertilizer problem coming into the continent of America? Or because I've heard that they're already doing it in the south of the continent of America. But what is the possibilities of this problem of fertilizer, this agenda, because it is kind of like an agenda to bring it over here to the West, to the continent of America? Is it on a fast pace, Michael? Do you consider that it's going to be in a fast pace, that it's going to move at a fast pace in the next year?
It already is affecting us in the United States very clearly. And also Mexico and the United States are affected dramatically by the droughts. I was just over at Piedras Negras for a couple of weeks on the Mexican side, and I went down by that Corona factory that's deeper into the north part of Mexico. And as you know, I believe they've completely shut down about 3 months ago, right? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Because of it's just dry, man. And when I was driving through there, I'm like, man, this is really, I don't know how it normally is up there, but I was talking with Mexican citizens, and they're like, yeah, we don't have enough water. And then the president of Mexico is like, we're shutting down the breweries up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as you see what's happening in California, what's happening in Texas, what's happening in other states in the United States, what's happening in northern Mexico, it's also happening all over Europe. We've had about half of Europe is in drought conditions right now. I'm driving around, Oscar, and the corn is so dry. I mean, it's unbelievable. And now we've got other issues. Remember, energy first, because energy is a kill shot. Even if we run out of diesel or if the prices are just too high, we all see it in our food prices because all these tractors, it's got to be moved around in the semi trucks. It's got to be, they produce something called DEF, which most people in the United States and Mexico have probably heard of, the diesel additive that you have to add for the semi trucks. There's a sensor in the newer diesel operating like semi trucks and that sort of thing. So you have to add this DEF into it, right? Here in this country, in Europe, they call it AdBlue. But AdBlue is also, in DEF, it's the same thing, are created by using the natural gas, actually. They use natural gas to also create that, right? So if we run out of that, all of our semi trucks are not going to work because there's a computer on your semi trucks,
Yes.
and it's got that sensor, and it'll just like shut them down to 15 miles an hour or something. So think about that with our trains and everything else. If we have this rail strike, there's a lot of points of failure in the United States, and usually we can get through even a terrible drought because we're very resilient. It'll raise the prices. It'll be a pain, but nobody's going to starve, right? But now we've all these different things, all these food fires everywhere, tremendous amounts of fires, and the explosions at Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. I would say watch the Yamal pipeline that comes through Russia, originates in Russia and goes through Ukraine and goes over through Poland and Germany. I think if I'm correct, I think we're going to start seeing pipelines shut down one by one, and undersea cables are at high risk. I also suspect, for instance, the Norwegian pipelines. Poland just opened one the day after. They've been working on that for quite a while. Because Poland's smart. They don't want to. I lived in Poland for 2 years. They are highly suspicious of Russians and Germans, right? The two destroyers of Europe, Russia and Germany. And this is the white people Middle East. You know what I mean? And the only reason it's been at peace is because after World War II, we kept the U.S. military here for several generations, and now that's going away. And I mean, Oscar, let me tell you something on a side note. Yesterday, I was in Belfast in Northern Ireland. They've got over 20 miles of wall up, like between Gaza and Israel, like between the old Berlin Wall. And it's only separating Protestants from Catholics, right? I mean, and it's unbelievable because they kill each other up there, right? That's why I always call this I lived in Europe for 6 years, 4 in Germany and 2 in Poland, and been all over this place. And I came to the realization between that and traveling the world a lot, like Europe is a powder keg. It's just not now because there's plenty of money and everything's going good, and the U.S. military is here, trying to keep people from killing each other like they normally do in Europe. And but now that's going away. Now we're going into serious energy crisis over in Germany. Oscar, you're not going to believe it. They're cutting down. I just drove like 1,000 miles through Germany. I drove all the way from Netherlands over to Prague, over in Czech Republic, and then I went down to Hungary and Austria and back up and crisscrossing all over Germany. They're cutting down so many forests, you won't believe it. I mean, it's just like they're cutting them down. I told Jordan Peterson, I said, when you fly over Germany and you leave Netherlands, look out your window and take some photos. You're not going to believe it. I'm wondering what this is going to look like because they don't have the energy, Oscar. The pipelines are cut. So not all of them, but enough of them that they're going to run out of natural gas in probably January or February, like out, right? And so right now they're creating what's called heating islands, like in school gymnasiums and that sort of thing, because people are not going to be able to stay warm. So they're creating.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
That is crazy.
So the German tribes can get to know the Somali tribes that they just, invited in. I mean, so they continue to bring migrants in huge numbers, knowing they're going into famine. I mean, or the people that are paying attention know this is going into famine. And yet they're still, like, they've got migrants right now. It's all over the news in Netherlands today, living on cruise ships, still coming in, knowing that they're running out of energy and food. This is destined for war, right? And so it's better for everybody to kind of stay where you're at and start planting gardens. You know what I mean?
I want to get to that. I want to ask you that because now it is these a lot of U.S. citizens, they are doing this kind of stuff. They're farming and they're preparing, right? They're preparing for for the possible food shortages that are going to happen, but they're being and hardly attacked as conspiranoic, and also they are being hardly attacked as why are you preparing? Nothing is going to happen. Do you actually believe? Because I know that possibly you believe that exactly like me, that it's all tied together. You got the global compact of immigration, you got the global compact of education, you got the global compact of the environment that is the Paris deal right now, that is the ones that they are possibly it has to do with all of this energy created crisis that for order to order it, you got to collapse it, Michael. Then this is possibly they're collapsing this to order it. It has to do with fertilizer. It has to do with natural gas. It has to do with all of this kind of stuff. Do you actually believe that it's all tied?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's some normal background noise, of course. I mean, there are, things that just happen. We always get hit with hurricanes and that sort of thing. I mean, because there's earthquakes and stuff do just happen, and droughts do just happen. Now, there are some people that think these droughts may be related to meddling with climate, which could be actually true. But I don't know how much of it's normal It's hard to separate signal to noise sometimes. But what we can see is that a lot of it clearly is man-made. And also the WEF people, as they call them in Netherlands, the World Economic Forum, the party of Davos, the globalists down in Switzerland, they're saying it with their mouths. It's not conspiracy theory. They say it, that they're going to reduce the population on Earth. And they're well on their way. I mean, they're pumping these death jabs into people. Which are clearly causing a huge amount of excess deaths, and the food issues. Now, one of the things that happens in famine, I've read 20 books on famine, because we're clearly going into it, and I'm a great believer in reading what the old people wrote so that I can benefit from the experience that they wrote down. And one of the things you'll find studying famine, I would recommend to everybody just quickly read 5 random books on famine. And then you're going to see a lot of things that I see. You'll what you'll find in famine is that most of the people actually don't die from starvation. They die from disease, right? Because as your body gets weaker, you get basically population size AIDS, right? Like your immune system's just depressed. And so the opportunistic cold that normally you'd be like coughing for a few days, now you're coughing and you're dead, right? Or you get what's called famine fevers. Famine fevers usually takes 3 to 6 months or so before it sets in once you got a famine going, and that will include typhus. I see typhus outbreaks now in California, and you'll have not that there's a big famine in California, but and you'll get relapsing fevers. You'll get a lot of waterborne illnesses like cholera, because as you go into famine, people are weaker, and also the electricity will go out, and because people just, just go out, right, for all kinds of reasons. One is nothing destroys a society much in greater detail than a famine. I mean, fire and famine. I mean, it's unbelievable, and so it's like a neutron bomb almost. So when you add the depressed immune systems, I've been talking with quite a few doctors about this, immunologist, a virologist, and a vaccinologist as well, and talking about this depressed immunity that appears to be occurring due to some of these death jabs atop these nutritional shortages that we're clearly going to start to have in a big way, certainly by late 2023 at max. And certainly by 2024, the sky's the limit. Because remember, these famines often have a long flash to bang, right? There's two major types of famines in the many famines I've read about. One is the sort of, I call it a light switch famine, like you flip the light on and now you got a famine. Like that happened in Netherlands in 1944 and 45. In 1944, the Nazis came in, it was World War II, and they just shut the food off to the Dutch because the Dutch had a big resistance going on. So they just shut it off. So they went from having enough food, it was still wartime, but they had enough. They weren't starving. They were hungry, but they weren't starving. And then the Nazis came in and destroyed and captured a bunch of warehouses and transportation routes and that sort of thing. So the Dutch went from, they had food to starving like 1 week later, right? And so that was like a light switch. So we were parachuting in food to them. Swedish were trying to send them food. Our planes were getting shot down, sending them food. And then about 6 months later, a lot of our grandparents parachuted in on Market Garden and that sort of thing, and liberated Netherlands, and we brought a lot of food. So that was a light switch. It kind of started and stopped really quickly. Like it had a distinctive on and off switch. But that's not how most famines go. Most famines kind of fade into it, right? You kind of fade slowly into it. Slow, long flash to bang. Now, the people that have studied up and they know what they're looking at can see the symptoms. For instance, I've said on my live streams and on my page many times that one symptom that I've read about in some of the books is people just start carrying spoons around, right? And even when I was in the Army, we would carry spoons around because you don't want to be without your spoon, man. You're hungry a lot, and you're like, where's my spoon? And so it's funny when I'm reading about famine, like in the hunger winter in the 1944-45 in Netherlands, a lot of the Dutch people carried spoons around, and likewise in Ukraine during their famines and that sort of thing. So this lady told me about 2 weeks ago, one of my readers, she said, nice lady, she said, a well-dressed man came to church. He actually had a spoon, and she remembered it.
You have to be kidding me with that. You have to be kidding me.
I know it. I was like, wow. I mean, this is a psychological thing to carry a spoon. When I was in the Army, I carried a spoon all the time because I didn't want. Sometimes you're like, man, I got a chance, and I don't want to be, Anyway, but that's not a famine. That was just Army training. You know what I mean? That's like nothing compared to.
But it's preparing. It's basically preparing, Michael.
Yeah, and let me tell you this. There's this farmer I was with named Jordan. He was on the Jordan Peterson show. I introduced him, actually. Actually, I took Jordan Peterson to his dairy farm. So I was out with Jordan a couple of weeks ago on his farm with Jordan Peterson. And Jordan said, hey, they're starting to glean again. Gleaning. Gleaning is when people go, like, you hear a horn outside. When a farmer, harvests their field, usually they leave about 2 to 3% of the crops, like onions and whatnot. They fall off the truck, or they just don't get them out of the ground or whatever. So 2 to 3% of the crops are just left in the field, right? And often they don't harvest the corners. because the corners, your tractor doesn't make the turn quite, so you leave that little spot. So in the past, the local villagers would come hit the corners, and they would glean the fields. Like there's a super famous painting from 1858, I think. I put it on my locals a couple weeks ago. And so these three women in a field gleaning, they're just picking crops up, and it was highly political back then, that painting, because it was like, hey, this is the people rising up. And the interesting thing, though, let's go back to Jordan the farmer. So I'm at his farm with Jordan Pierce, and Jordan says, hey, the people are starting to glean. The old people are out in the fields. He said, I've never seen this in my life. He's like, my parents and grandparents used to talk about this. This is what they did back in the wars and when they were very hungry. And even in the 50s and 60s, they would be gleaning the fields all the time. And if you look in the Bible under gleaning, not cleaning, but gleaning, gleaning's an actual word. And you could look up gleaning in the Bible. It's in two different parts of the Bible, right? And they're talking about, you should leave. The farmer should leave the glean. You should leave, some of the crop in the field for the
Wow.
It's in the so this gleaning has started again. This is another symptom. We're not
Biblical.
in a famine yet. Yeah, it's right. You can see it. It's the signs are there, right? And like the old people have written all this stuff down. The signs are there. You see more migration. That's one of the signs. You'll see people carrying spoons. Gleaning in the fields has started again, right? People are stealing from, okay, let me talk about this. Another symptom to watch for is people start stealing from the farmers, right? When I was a kid, sometimes I was hungry in Florida and I would go steal oranges, right? And I would take my rifle and go hunting, and I would fish all the time. So I was totally prepared for the army. But what I'm getting to is people start stealing from the farmers because they're hungry. They'll start stealing from the stores. They'll start stealing from the trucks and the trains and the boats and that sort of thing. And so food stops transporting. So you end up with these food deserts when there's still plenty of food somewhere else, but they're not going to bring the food to the stores that keep getting robbed. And then as the farmers, especially by the second season when a famine is starting, that first season, this is how hunger can create famine, which sounds kind of crazy. Like, famine creates hunger, but actually hunger can create famine, because a lot of times when people are hungry, it's not because there's not enough food, it's because there's not enough money. They don't have a job. The economy's going crazy. They're printing too much money, like in 1922 in Germany and the Weimar days. And they had famine there because they were just printing money, right? And I won't go into the details. There's a great book on it called When Money Dies, right? And you'll see that when people were hungry in Germany, they started stealing food. They started stealing from the farmers. And then in every single case, in every book I've read on famine, the government always goes to steal from farmers. And then the farmers start to go out of business. They start to go bankrupt. They start to just not farm. And now you get a real famine. Now you go from, we were just hungry and didn't have enough money, just hungry you know what I mean? To actually not having enough food and literally eating tree barks and eating leather. And every famine book I read, people eat mud, go ahead.
It is kind of like it is like a domino effect, and it has like a process.
Yeah,
it is a process of how it is going to get to that point. I want to drop into another topic that is pretty well for everybody that is joining in. How's everybody doing? Thank you so much for joining in. Share the video. I know that we have a lot of censorship right now today, as we have Mr. Michael Yon, but he is explaining the food shortages that is happening right now in Europe, and ultimately how it has to do with the fertilizer and how this is going to trickle and how it is going to be a domino effect to the continent of America, and it is already arriving to the continent of America. But one of the things that I have admired, and the reason why I admire this man so much, is it is possibly one of the only Americans that has gone into the Darien Gap. Now, jumping into immigration topic, Michael, you're possibly, the one that started, doing a lot of investigation at the Darien Gap. You also Mr. Chuck Colton, that is another great also journalist, also investigator, also and great individual, also great person. But I will ask you this question. I'm gonna be bold with this because you have been to Darien Gap a lot of times. Is it almost comparable right now to the deaths that are happening in the U.S.-American border right now? Is it almost as dangerous as what is happening in the U.S.-American borders with Mexico as it right now, what is happening inside of the Darien Gap? It is not going to be remotely the same because it is two different, demographic, geographically, we're talking about that is different. But is it comparison of what these situations are remotely almost the same as comparing to deaths of migrants?
Actually, Chuck Colton is awesome. We've been deep into the Darien Gap numerous times together. He and his Spanish is fluent, by the way. And I would say Darien is even more dangerous, like a lot more dangerous. There are so many vultures there. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I really believe those vultures are feeding a lot of them on humans because there's so many die out there. It's unbelievable. Like one guy, I called him 22 days. He's from Ecuador. And I joke with him when I called him 22 days because he was stuck in the Darien Gap for 22 days. and he told me his story in detail. And finally, I'm like, I'm just going to call you 22 days because that's the most. What happened was when Biden became president, they were living down in Ecuador, and his wife, she's Cuban, and his wife was like, and he's Ecuadorian. His wife wanted to make a go for Texas because she had family in Dallas, I think. And so she took off, and he started to follow her through Colombia and up into the Darien Gap, and he got stuck. And his wife left him in the jungle. He's like, wow. Michael, the big black birds, they were coming around and landing in the tree. They wanted me. And he goes, and the mosquitoes were so terrible because he fell off of this little part of a mountain that was muddy and he couldn't get back up. So he's down there for 5 days, right? So now he's going into like the 6th or 7th day. And he's like, oh, I'm putting my wife's perfume on to keep the mosquitoes away. She left me. And the guy was kind of funny. We were kind of laughing at it because he's obviously alive telling me. And I said, did your wife's perfume keep the mosquitoes off? He's like, no, it made them come more. And so he goes, then the black ones came, the black people, they came. And this guy was hilarious, man. I really like him. He goes, and then they came, they were the Haitians and they helped me. They pulled me up and they gave me some food. And he goes, the Haitians, they stayed with me for 2 days and then I couldn't keep up. And then, he kept going on his own. And then he said some other really big black ones came. They were from the Congo, and he was telling me the story. And he said, they gave me food for 2 days. Again, so the Haitians 2 days, and then the ones from Congo for 2 days. And he said, they stayed with me. They helped me. They prayed with me. And then they had to keep going. They said, I'm sorry, we had to. And then he ran into the Indians, and the Indians killed a woman right in front of him. And then the Indians rescued him. And so the same Indians that killed this woman then rescue him. And a migrant woman, right? And which is a story you hear every single day. That's not a story you hear once a week. That's a story you'll hear 10 times a day when you're down there. I mean, it's like every 15 minutes you hear that. It's a lot of murder and stuff down there. And I went down. Those are the actual Indians I go down with, the Imbra Indians and the Kuna Indians, right? Now, it's not like all the Indians are killing people. That's not true because remember, one rescued 22 days and another one killed that woman, right? And so he's like, yeah. And then it's strange, the one man killed the woman and then the other took care of me and took me on the boat, down to the Bajo Chiquito, which is the village where I got on this trail, and which is still like 25. I took 2 congressmen down there, by the way. Chuck and I did. We took Burgess Owens from Utah, and we took Tom Tiffany from Wisconsin. Tom Tiffany, man, that man gets out there. He's always rolling around in Texas or whatever on the border, and I was really stunned that 2 congressmen, Burgess Owens and Tom Tiffany, had the guts to go out there with no security.
Can you mention them again? Can you mention them again, Michael, so people will know and they will know that actually there's actually congressmen and which political party are they from? But if actually congressmen have gone down there with you, and this is actually something that needs to be mentioned because not all people go down there and report on what is happening.
Oh, I know. There's one side of me that's willing to throw out the entire U.S. government, and then I keep remembering there's people like Burgess Owens and Tom Tiffany. They're serious people. You know what I mean? They really are looking for the truth. They really are looking to make life great again. You know what I mean? And they went down there. Tom Tiffany from Wisconsin and Burgess Owens, both Republicans.
Now, I want to ask you
and-
something,
and,
Michael. I want to ask you something.
Mhm.
Now, most recently on my investigations and my travels with the caravans, I have seen a lot of these gang-related and ultimately really violent, infiltrated individuals from Venezuela. It is a reality. I was with them. I was walking with them, and a lot of them had to do with Tren de Aragua. That is a really violent, dangerous gang that is in Venezuela, and it is actually now being infiltrated into, and it has arrived into the United States of America. The most aggravating thing about this is that now these travel agencies are promoting it to travel to the United States of America as travel advisors. They're not traffickers, they're not coyotes, they are now being designated as travel advisors. And I saw a promotional banner. I think it was in before entering Bajo Chiquito. I think it is, and it already has some promotions of cost of how much is going to cost you to move from point A to point B in the Darien Gap. Do you actually believe that this is really being promoted inside? Because we already know the cost of how much it takes from one island to another island: $40, $20, $60, $100. It depends on which kind of route, but it's getting ridiculous to have promotions on every part of the Darien. Do you actually believe that this is actually happening?
It's a fact. I mean, I not only believe it, but Chuck Colton and I were maybe the first two reporting on it. I mean, you can see it. I mean, it's printed out. I mean, it's like they give them like folders, plastic folders with all your papers, and this is where you get the bus, and the Catholic Charities in Texas will do this, and like I was over with Todd Bensman. Todd, we were down in Mexico. They had a bunch of pregnant women lined up giving them the jab. I'm like, what are you doing? They got babies in their bellies, and you're giving them these experimental drugs to get into the United States. You know what I mean? They had all these pregnant women lined up. They were just giving them these quote unquote vaccines. And it's just like, it's a crime against, they're pregnant women, and they're forcing them to get these jabs to get in the United States. I mean, it's just all kinds of, it's so like out of a Stephen King movie. You know what I mean? We were down in Colombia. I was down in Colombia with Chuck Colton and a Japanese journalist named Masako Ganaha. And there was a TV in this hotel restaurant we were at, and CNN was on there showing the map, and it was in Spanish showing which way, for the migrants to go. Right? Ask Chuck when you talk with him. Yeah, nope. Chuck was right there.
You have to be kidding me with this, man.
Nope. I know, man. I started the video, and Chuck's translating to Spanish as they go. Right there. So ask Chuck. I mean, when you talk with him again. We were all there at that. There's
a question right here. There's a question right here for you, Michael. Are U.S. activists or NGOs, do they help prepare these kind of folders to them? And what do they do when they get to the U.S.?
They do a lot of things. One is they'll go to Catholic Charities, for instance, in McAllen, as one example, Texas, and where else? I've seen them. So many places. So many, I can't even remember. And I'm sure you've seen them as well. And that's on both sides of the border. Like I've been to Catholic Charities down in Mexico. Where was that? I've been all over northern Mexico.
Have you seen them down south? Have you seen them down south in Central America? Have you seen them over there?
I went down to Chiapas, and we saw quite a few different things. I was down in Chiapas with Chuck, and you've been there, so you know that very well, because I watch your reporting from there all the time. And so, I mean, you spent a lot of time. So actually, I would ask you, although I have been down there, I don't have the level of experience that you have in Chiapas. I've just got enough that when you're talking about it, I can understand it quite well. Like and like for instance, in Panama, when they come out of the jungle at Bajo Chiquito, you'll have Norwegian Refugee Council, the NRC. You'll have the UN. Man, when I just got on the airplane from Amsterdam and Netherlands to fly to Dublin last week, there was a UN migration ticket counter. You can't even make it up. It was like the same thing you see in Darien. I'm like, this is the same people. They got the same tents down in Darien, right? It's the same people. They don't even hide it.
Are you surprised that the demographics in terms to entities has changed? Because according to what is happening, entering Tapachula, Yucatan, the south of the part of the country of Mexico, There's a lot right now. We just saw a Jewish sect by the name of Lev Tahor. This is a radical sect that were detained, and now they're being released. Two of these leaders of this sect were accused of child trafficking and organized crime. Are you surprised a little bit that the demographics have changed into it's not just Central America? It's pretty much really different groups. Chinese, I have seen a lot of Chinese. I've seen a lot of Russians coming in into the south of the border. Are you surprised that the demographics are changing?
Well, it's changed a lot. In fact, I've reported that quite a few times. Like, for instance, like last year, I didn't see any Chinese last year. I would hear about them and be like, yeah, we saw some Chinese last week or whatever. Now, when I'm down in Darien, every day, Chinese, every single day, mainland Chinese, not from Taiwan or something, but like in the Chinese that I've talked with, they'll go to, they'll come from China and they'll go to Ecuador first, and then they'll come up through Colombia and then get through. And then I see Pakistanis every day, Indians, of course, Nepalese, Bangladeshis, Yemenis, many from Yemen. You'll see, people that'll say I'm Ukrainian, but as somebody who's spent, more than half my life in about 90 countries now, I can spot people pretty well, you know what I mean? And they're telling me they're from Ukraine. I'm like, suspicious face here. I don't know where they're from sometimes, but I don't think that they're all Ukrainians, especially since Ukrainians are allowed to come in the front door, right? But actually, a lot of the Cubans and Haitians were going to Suriname a lot, or Chile, right? As you know, because you're about to go to Chile, and
Yes.
and then they would go, and then because the Cubans and the Haitians could go to Suriname without visa, and then they go over to Colombia and make their way up. But as you know, a lot of Cubans now can bypass that and go to Nicaragua first, right? And so but I don't know if the Haitians have a new route now, but
I
the
want to ask
Haitians are coming
this
through
is
in
the
high
new
numbers.
route that is being prompt. So just for you, I don't know if you know this new route, but it's from Venezuela to the Dominican Republic, from there to Tortola, that is a specific island. Then they pay a hotel, food. They pay them hotel and food, and then on a boat to St. Thomas. That they're saying that is property and that is territory of the United States of America. Have you heard about this route that they're using this boat route, or to not touch the Darien?
Nope. But if you give me that information, I'll fly over and look.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you after
how
right
I
now,
roll.
after we finish. I'll give it to you. Oh, I already got your mind going, huh?
Yeah. You do.
Now,
You just gave me my next assignment.
yes, that is a humongous route, Michael, that they're using right now. They're using to not touch the Darien. That's supposedly now it is the new promotional for you to not risk your life through the Darien and go around with a boat. That is supposedly it. I want to ask you a question, and we're getting on 51 minutes. For everybody that does not know, this is the great Michael Yon, war correspondent, war journalist, award-winning journalist, ultimately one great role model for journalism for everybody to follow him. And I will put his website right now on the screen as we are going into 51 minutes and into this broadcast. As an American, and I'm a Mexican citizen, Michael, and my first time interviewing you as an American, ex-military man, that you dedicated your life to your country and you put your life on the line for your country multiple times. Do you feel right now that this is the worst administration in the history of the United States? And do you feel that, your country is being destroyed little by little in one way?
By easily the worst. I mean, this is a destruction that's going to lead to the deaths. I mean, we can already see that there's going to be global famines. Mathematically, I don't see how you can actually get out of this. Yesterday I was at the Titanic Museum up in Belfast in Northern Ireland, because that's where they built the Titanic. I was right there where they built it, and I was looking at this going, we're on the Titanic again. And the iceberg is so close that it's too late. It doesn't matter how much you turn the wheel, you're going to hit it. So the question is, are you going to hit it straight on, which is the way we're heading right now? Or are we going to, the thing is that it looks like there's going to be severe famines in Europe. I don't even know how you're going to get out of it. That sounds crazy at this point, but remember, I started warning about this in January 2020, back when it was so far away that most people could not even foresee how this would. I'm going back biblical stuff, pandemic, famine, war, right? You know what I mean? I mean, the old people knew how to, if you get a big pandemic, now we know this has turned out to be a pandemic, but at the same time, the effects have been similar, and we can see the people in Davos, the party of Davos, the globalists are clearly, and with their own words in writing and on, you can see them on YouTube saying they're going to reduce the population of people on Earth, and cutting down the Haber-Bosch process that we just talked about earlier, and the nitrogen-based fertilizers and that sort of thing. That is definitely, if there's not enough food, if there's not enough nutrition, people are just going to starve, period. And it's musical chairs. There's just not enough chairs. There's not enough nutrition. And that's clearly how it's shaping up. Now, keep in mind, this is a long flash to bang, but we're clearly already, the famines have definitely begun, but we're on that front edge. And now we're living off of the food that's already been created. And we've seen a lot of droughts this year in Mexico and big parts of the United States, and also about 50% of Europe. Pakistan just had terrible floods. India's got problems. India can't get the fertilizer. Brazil can't get the fertilizer they need. And think about this from the HOP, the human osmotic pressure, the push and pull of migration that you and I both study quite a lot. It's going to create a lot of osmotic pressure, a lot of push and a lot of pull. So that's why I've been warning about Darien Gap for so long, that this is a super highway to the United States is being created, right? But we're not going to have the food either. So mostly, as you've seen, it's mostly military age males that are coming through. It's very clearly mostly young fighting age. Now, I've seen these Venezuelans you're talking about, and a lot of the Cubans as well too. I mean, these are studs, man. These are not
Yes.
like guys. They're not Nintendo boys. You know what I mean?
No.
These are like guys that can do something. You know what I mean? And a lot of Americans and Europeans don't get, when you're bringing all these people in from different parts of, a lot of those might be criminal gangs, and clearly are. But another thing that happens that a lot of Europeans don't get, and Americans, is that you're not bringing in individuals. You're bringing in actual tribes. Like, you're bringing in real Somali tribes. Like, I was talking with a Nigerian man last week, and he's from Western Nigeria. And he's like, because I started asking him about tribes, because he's like, no, Nigerians don't try to find each other. We find our tribes, because we all came from tribes in Nigeria or Somalia or whatever. And so the tribe finds itself. So what a lot of the Europeans and Americans don't get is that you're not bringing in a bunch of individuals that are going to melt into the melting pot. It's coming in as a lump, and that's a lump that has a lot of power. And they don't speak our languages. They don't have the time to assimilate, and they're coming during a time of energy and food crisis and political crisis. And historically, what this will do is create war. This creates conditions for wars. Amateurs are always talking about sparks. You know, what will the spark be? It's not about sparks. It's about conditions, right? I mean, if you have a dry forest and somebody throws out a cigarette, you can burn down half the state, right? Because it's about the conditions. But if you have a fireworks factory in the Darien Gap, in a rainforest, and the firework factory can blow up and you can throw out cigarettes all day long, you're never going to burn down the Darien Gap, because it's a rainforest. It's not, the conditions aren't set to burn down Darien Gap, right? And it's all about conditions. And you can see the globalists are setting Europe up, and the United States and the Mexican government. They're clearly going for Mexico as well.
Yeah.
To destabilize Canada. I mean, Canadians for years, they talk about how free it is up there. I'm like, you're not free. You don't have freedom of speech. If you don't have freedom of speech, you just don't have freedom, period, right? And the United States is hugely at risk. But insofar as, unless we have a nuclear war, which is a real possibility.
Now, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question going into that you mentioned war. Now, as a Mexican citizen, and the perspective that I'm looking at right now from the other side of the spectrum, from the other side of the country, the United States, I'm seeing millions. Now, it's not thousands. I'm seeing millions coming in regular fashion through the border. Now, they're staying in the United States of America. Most of these people, a lot of them, they're against communism. A lot of them, they're against this leftist political, agendas. But what would happen? And this is a question for you because you have been in war. You're an ex-military man, and you are, a war correspondent. I want to ask you this, Michael. What would happen if a next president comes in and he takes the decision to say, you know what, a lot of these people they enter the country irregularly. They need to be returned back to their country. What do you think the effect is going to cost? Because these people are not going to go back. They already been let in. And if you're telling them you're going to be sent back, what do you think the effect is going to be?
It's conditions for war. And I keep warning my Mexican friends too. It's like, I know you're letting them go through right now, but the United States is clearly, conditions are being set for civil war in the United States. It's very clear. And that could be the most incredibly.
Wow. He was disconnected. Wow. He was disconnected right now. I don't know where he went. If you're hearing me, Michael, you were just kicked out of the live feed, and my hands are in. Oh, right here. We got him right here. Here.
Okay, we got cut off.
You scared me for a little bit, man. You don't scare me like that.
You see a flash of light, and I go off. Clearly, conditions are being set for an incredible civil war in the United States. And keep in mind what happens during war, pandemic, and famine. Human osmotic pressure. That's why I keep warning my Mexican friends. Right now, people come into the United States, but if we have a significant civil war, you'll have that tidal flow go right back to Mexico, right? Wherever there's food, whatever, and they're going to be coming with guns. You know what I mean? So it's like right now, Mexico runs Mexico and the cartels run. Next thing you know, they'll also face serious resistance from seriously credible forces.
It is already showing.
Yeah, I mean, so that tide can go right back into Mexico. I mean, Mexico has a huge vested interest in stopping those flows down at Chiapas and just not letting them flow in, but they don't see it. And some Americans see it clearly. You see it clearly. You've been studying it, and others, the Canadians, they're living up there in Canada land. A lot of them do see it, but a lot of them have just become too soft. They don't. Like firewood. Let's talk about that for a minute on the energy. Like, how many people have really heated their homes all through a winter time with firewood? Not very many. So right now you see Germany cutting down forest, all of it green wood, because they don't have enough natural gas to heat their homes. They're not going to have enough electricity, right? And so they're just not going to, and it's green wood. They can't burn that wood this year. It takes a couple of years to cure most of the wood, right? You can burn some of it, but it's going to burn very inefficiently, very smoky. Watch the air pollution quality, air quality index across Europe as we go into winter, and all these chimneys suddenly have thick smoke coming out of them because they're burning wet wood. Even if it's dried perfect wood, it's going to be a lot of smoke when you got millions of people got their chimneys lit up, because there's never been this many people in Europe before. Because the population, thanks to things like Haber-Bosch process, better energy distribution and production, and better vehicles, trains and ships and that sort of thing. Now you've got 400-500 million people in Europe, depending on how you count the numbers and which countries you count. A lot of people, more than there's ever been. And now we're going into an energy crisis, which means food. Energy crisis means food crisis, right? And so we're going into an energy and food crisis, and they're still letting massive numbers of migrants come in, who are coming in by the shipload, and they're coming in by the tribe. You know what I mean? It's going to be war. I don't see, as a war correspondent, I don't see any way to get through this without a huge amount of bloodshed.
There you have it. Really informative today. I wish that I can talk to you, man. I can stay talking to you, man, the whole day. Let's
do it again next week.
Yeah, let's do it again. Absolutely. Let's do it again next week, and let's touch on another subjects. I can't wait to travel with you in Europe, man. Oh my God, I can't wait to do that.
If you'd have come a little earlier, my visa just ran out for the mainland. That's why I came to Ireland, because I was there for 3 months. You can get 3 months, and now I need to get back to Texas. But the things that you just told me tell me I might need to do a little side stop on the way back.
Yes, absolutely. This is Mr. Michael Yon. I will put your website right now on the screen, Michael, so people can actually go right now and search you. It is there. You have it. Is Michael Yon. You can contribute to Mr. Michael Yon on this website. I'm not even going to talk about it. I'll let you explain your website, Michael, so people how can they get to you? How can they contribute to your phenomenal and incredible work?
Thank you, Oscar. I'm on locals.com every day. Locals, like local barbershop, you know what I mean? And since 2005, when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, for those many years, I was doing only reader supported work. So I only take donations. That's it. And I never do advertisement, never do anything like that. And so that's how I've been able to stay completely independent and go around and go to places like Darien, which actually is very, very expensive, because I'll go and I'll stay for like 2 or 3 months, literally, which, New York Times or somebody like that will never pay somebody to do so it would be too expensive, and it's too open-ended. Like, when I go to Europe and say, okay, I'm going to go for 2 weeks and I stay for 3 months. Right. So, and likewise, Darien, when I go down there, hey, I'll be down here for a week. And next thing you know, it's 2 or 3 or 4 months I've spent down there in the last, how much time did I spend in Darien in the last year and a half? I'd say 3 or 4 months. I don't even know. It's a long time. It wasn't 3 or 4 weeks. I'll tell you that much. I mean, I had to get to know the Indians and all that stuff and so major, companies wouldn't, first of all, it's very dangerous. I mean, the work you do is extremely dangerous. So, CNN's not going to hire somebody like you. I mean,
I have seen where the CNN and these correspondents they only walk to. They only go to the really, safe places, and then that's it, Michael. Yeah. That's it. They cut the interview immediately.
Oh yeah, and then they start using B-roll from people like us, right?
Yeah,
they just don't do it. Like even Fox, they won't cross into Mexico, right? As you know, you and I have a lot of mutual friends, so we both have a lot of insight on what really happens, and yeah. They don't roll. And it was like that in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. When I was in the fighting in Thailand, the people that are really out there getting it on are people like us. It's not people like the majors. They have so much. The CIA is the same way, by the way. They're so risk averse. People are like, oh, the CIA is doing this and doing that. And I'm like, listen, if the CIA was half as good as you say they are, 9/11 never would have happened. You know what I mean? And we wouldn't be in all these troubles right now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's like Walmart does a better job than CIA. You know what I'm saying? Walmart, CIA. People say to me like, "You're the CIA down in Darien." I'm like, the CIA would never do that. They got so much risk aversion. The biggest risk they'll take is going to Daytona Beach after 9:00 at night. You know what I mean? They just won't do it.
So for everybody that is watching, this is Mr. Michael Yon's website. It has been an honor, and it's going to be an honor next week also to have him on to talk about different topics and also to talk about different subjects that that he has a lot of knowledge of, and we can share about our basically our experiences in terms to immigration. We exchange a lot of information. It is an honor for me, Mr. Yon, to have you. Thank you so much for your time. You are right now in Ireland. You're not from Ireland. You are in Ireland right now.
That's right.
You have been traveling the whole Europe. It's going to be an honor for me to meet you one day, if it is in the Darien, or if it is in Europe, whatever place that it is. I want to thank you so much for your time. I will contact you right now to give you the information that you need regarding what we talked about. But thank you so much again. Something that you got to say something you want to say to the audience?
No, I just know when we finally meet face to face, it'll be in some crazy place in some crazy country.
It's not going to be at a restaurant. I'll tell you that. It's not going to be at a fancy restaurant.
No, it won't.
It is always at a hostile place. It's always at a hostile place. But those are the good places, Mr. Yon.
That's right. I'll see you, Oscar.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There you have it. That is Mr. Michael Yon. What a great interview. What a great moment right now to have him on. It's a great experience for me, and ultimately, it's kind of like a role model for me. These military men that they have been in combat, and now they turn their combat, abilities into journalism. That is more that you learn from the raw and uncut footage, the boots on the ground work. You learn a lot from them, as there's a lot of strategies to go into different places. It's not just going into journalism and I'm a broadcast right here. No, you have to be really prepared for every kind of situation. Thank you so much for joining in. Buy me a coffee. It is pinned on the chat. If people want to contribute to our independent reporting and travel fund, buy me a coffee is pinned in the chat. God bless you all. Stay safe. Follow me on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram as Oscar Blue Ramirez, also Oscar Blue Team. Getter as Oscar Blue. We're live at Getter also, so say hello to everybody at the Getter audience. And also, follow my partner, Real Anthony and Widow Ben Berquan, Frontline America, Real America's Voice News, Wendy Bell Radio Network, and also Mr. Michael Yon himself, as I have mentioned multiple times in my platform. Thank you, and thank you. God bless you all. Stay safe. And like we always say, people, peace and love, because always your country's first. God bless.
We're in the middle of everything. They're carrying a child. Look at this. They're carrying a child. Look at this. This is horrible.
Ustedes tienen familia, somos inmigrantes, no somos delincuentes. Somos inmigrantes, no somos delincuentes.
Discúlpeme, oficial. They have encapsulated them. They're pushing. Now they're pushing. Some of them, they're escaping underneath to the ranches. Look at this, man. They're throwing rocks. They're hitting the National Guard officers. Throwing rocks over here.
Gosh, what a scene to see really unfolding here, and having them use that rope so that they're all able to stay together is really interesting to see all this happen, Oscar.
Violence and homicides. Due to this factor, the military will get through to Tijuana. Entry of San Isidro next door to the city of Tijuana, Mexico. But migrants looking for asylum from Ukraine arrived to the peninsula.
Roto, señores, las barreras. Ya no los pueden controlar. They have broke the barriers. They cannot control them.